Hello, I'm Cheryl Dozier, and I'm host of The Game of Politics. No agendas, just honest political discussion. Welcome to the show. Today's show will address all things LGBTQ, and we're going to address legislative issues, we're going to address community issues, we're going to address all things that affect this particular community and how the community is affected. So joining me today is Kendall Martinez Wright. Welcome, Kendall.
Hello.
I'm so happy to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. I am so excited also to be on this show. I was like, I was looking forward to, being on your show.
Okay, then. And how is that niece of yours? I know that you were talking about her yesterday, and how's that beautiful baby?
She's doing much, much better. She is doing much, much better. It turns out she was just really fussy after getting her immunizations.
Oh, okay,
So,
yeah,
but
gotcha.
you know how babies are, you just kind of take it with a grain of salt.
Yes,
So,
exactly. Well, hey, we want you to make sure that you're available to take care of that baby, and I'm so glad you're here now.
yes.
Okay, well, I want to let everybody know that Kendall Martinez Wright, she is a well-known activist within the LGBTQ community and a mover and shaker in the Missouri State Capitol building. Everybody, I want you to welcome Kendall Martinez Wright. Okay, Kendall. Kendall, I want to first, I want to talk to you about and Nina Pop. And I want to address what happened to this young woman and where we are now with that type of thing going on.
Yeah.
I need to do a little bit of background on Nina, and we're going to actually dedicate the show to Nina because I think that she deserves that recognition. Well, Nina is a 28-year-old Black transgender, and she was stabbed to death in Sikeston, Missouri on May 3rd. She currently is the 10th violent death of a transgender this year in the US. She's the 5th known violent death this month, all transgender women of color. Now, there are things that affected this. I'd say there's a bit of transphobia. I'd say racism, and also some misogyny as well.
Yes.
Okay. Now, her story was covered in Essence, Democracy Now!, the AP, The Advocate, and BET.com. So I would be remiss if we didn't give her due today.
I totally agree.
Now, in 2019, we saw at least 26 or killed or other violent means. And so, but I want to give you this update and say that on May 19th, a 40-year-old suspect was held into custody without bond. His name was Joseph B. Cannon, and his motive was not yet identified, but they basically said that they were looking to charge him with a hate crime. That is my understanding. And so, Kendall, can you tell me a little bit about your relationship with Nina and how you feel about her?
Well, me and Nina, I knew her because actually one of her cousins went to graduate school at Lincoln University, and so that's how I got to know her. I met her at Lincoln University's homecoming actually, and ever since then, we kept up to date, check on each other, see. She was she was actually one of the few in the trans community that actually really helped me in recognizing um, my own identity and everything. And
Okay.
so it was very very difficult news to
Okay.
take, and especially during a time when we are also going through a global pandemic. That was the icing on the cake. Uh,
Okay. Yes, absolutely.
so this is very important for me because as a resident of Missouri and having to realize that the risk is increased with Black trans women, I now acknowledge that, especially with her death,
Sure.
because in the state of Missouri, there's no type of legislation that deals with that deals with hate crimes or that deals with
Okay.
um, the
Absolutely.
panic um, defense, any types of laws in regards to that. And so when it comes down to violence, especially with Black trans women
Mm-hmm.
here in this state, it's hard for them to have to really get to the root of the cause of the violence.
Okay, then. And I'm glad that you brought that up about the legislation because we're going to talk about several pieces of legislation that were submitted and filed by certain legislators within the Missouri state legislature that made it, they were filed, they made it to committee, and then we'll talk about what happened to them as we go through the legislation, okay?
Sounds
So,
good.
okay, so let's start with House Bill 2210, okay?
Hmm.
And it was relating to gender reassignment. Do you have any um, information that you can give us on how you felt about that particular piece of legislation?
That piece of legislation was difficult to have to sit through committee
Okay.
hearing just to read it. Pretty much what this piece of legislation did or wanted or what the sponsor want it to do is it denies services, critical services to individuals that were of the minor age.
Okay.
So if, for instance, if I was under the age of 18 and
Mm-hmm.
with parent and guardian
Mm-hmm.
support, they agreed of letting me undergo these treatments.
Yes.
That we, the parents and the medical providers, will be penalized, which
Oh,
is
wow.
just unimaginable because you would think as a parent you
Mm-hmm.
are doing what is best for your child,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
then as a doctor you are sworn on oath to provide all the necessary needs and care. And for this piece of legislation to explicitly say if you was to go ahead with this transition while they're a minor,
Mhm. Yes. Okay.
you're gonna be penalized.
Okay.
And it was just heartbreaking hearing the stories of children and of parents
Okay.
and medical professionals telling them that this is something that is downright derogatory and discriminatory, and how and them explaining that with this piece of legislation it is going to be the demise not only in the medical aspect, but it's going to
Yes.
be a demise. It's going to be unconstitutional because are um, you are in a way and interfering with their rights,
Yes.
uh,
Okay. Okay.
constitutional rights.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Well, as of the end of the legislative session, that particular piece of legislation failed. Okay. So
Yes.
I have no doubt that there will be another attempt
Mm-hmm.
to reintroduce the legislation for the 2021 legislative season. So we're going to be looking out for that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about House Bill 2051. And I don't know if you remember that particular piece of legislation, but it says that you have committed abuse or neglect of a person if you assist or coerce or provides a child undergoing any surgical or hormonal treatment for the purpose of reassignment. So that was different. It said hormonal treatment. The
Yes.
other was just gender reassignment. This also
Yes.
goes to hormonal treatment, which I think is very important because
Mm-hmm.
that hormonal treatment is what takes place before you get to the gender reassignment. Am I correct in that?
Yes, you are very correct. And it actually, so in order for individuals that are transitioning to get the gender reassignment surgery, on
Uh-huh.
average, it usually takes around 5 to 10 years. And that's
Wow.
because your body has to get acclimated. You have to also go through numerous steps to ensure that you are ready for the reassignment surgeries. You are ready for that extra big step because those surgeries are not
Okay.
irreversible. So so you are having to really be in the nitty gritty if you was transitioning to
Absolutely.
ensure
Okay.
that everything is going correctly.
Okay, then. All right, then. And do you feel that that legislation will be reintroduced for the 2021 legislative session, or do you think that because that piece of legislation also did not pass?
Correct.
So do you think that, or have you heard that anybody is going to be, or the same sponsor will be trying to reintroduce it? Or do you have any information at all on that particular piece?
Well, I do know that there has been some talks with the sponsors that they might reintroduce it again next session.
Okay.
It's still up in the air who's going to actually sponsor it. If the same person's going to sponsor it again, or if a different person will sponsor it. But I do know for a fact that they are going to work hard next year due to it not being so successful on their end, which is good on my end, but
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it
they
is.
will
It's
definitely
great.
try their hardest to push it forward next year, one way or
Okay.
another.
Okay. Now, there's another piece of legislation that Senate Joint Resolution 50.
Mm-hmm.
And this was introduced by Senator O'Laughlin.
Yep.
And it was an amendment. This reason that this is so important and that it was an amendment to Article 3 of the Missouri Constitution.
Yes.
And that is a big issue when you start to add amendments
Yes.
to the Constitution of the
Oh
state of
yeah.
Missouri. So basically, this legislation said that whatever is stated on your birth certificate,
Mm-hmm.
whether you are a male or a female, you have to be identified if you are entering any type of sports activity in the state of Missouri. You have to be admitted to that activity based on what is on your birth certificate and based on your anatomy. So, did you have a chance to participate in that particular piece of legislation at all?
Yes, I was in that committee hearing I will say this: when I provided my testimony, it was actually the first testimony during that session. I actually came out publicly as trans woman.
Oh, wow. I bet that was interesting.
I mean, there was a lot of gasp.
I bet it was.
I mean, it was
And good for
it
you,
was a
Kendall.
shock for
Yeah.
me and for everybody else, because I started my transition in 2017,
Okay.
and I didn't really tell a lot of people. Like they kind of noticed something was going on, but they didn't want to. They was like, "Oh, Kendall's doing Kendall." But yeah, that committee hearing specifically. I came out to all the senators on that committee. I came out to everybody, all the witnesses, um, in which I was, later on, Senator O'Loughlin actually me and her had a conversation. And it was a pretty decent one, because she did thank me for essentially coming out in a public space like that.
Okay.
Um, and the reason why I came out was because there is still there's still individuals, even in elected positions, that don't understand, or willingly not understand, the process of being a trans man or trans woman.
Okay.
And it is more than just what quote unquote is biological this and biological that, because
Okay.
when you talk about the chemistry and the sciences behind it, it's so much broader than what per se the textbook would say. And it's very detailed and intricate. And with that resolution,
Okay.
it was going to literally invalidate all scientific modes of the trans community.
Okay. Tell me this. When did you first realize, Kendall, that you were going to go in another direction than where you were originally when you were born? When did you start feeling that? Or when did you start thinking, well, you know what? This is not for me.
Well, I would say I would say I kind of noticed something was up during puberty. Now,
Really? Okay.
yeah, I noticed something was up during
Wow.
puberty, but I thought it was just, oh, okay, I'm gay, okay, this is no biggie. But then over time, I had severe gender dysphoria, which gave me horrible anxiety, horrible depression.
Really?
I actually attempted suicide a few times
Really?
due to
So,
that. It was very traumatic. Um, and even after I came out as gay, I was still going through these issues. And finally, it was actually my second or third year at Lincoln.
okay.
I went to my doctor, and I had him to recommend some good counselors and
Great.
psychologists to help me. And I had the most wonderful counselor, and they helped me, reassuring that, hey, look, this is completely normal. And it turns out like a lot of individuals kind of go realize it around that age range of 21 and 22 years old.
Yes.
And I thought, I was like, oh, I'm a late bloomer, because you know so like Jazz, that has the TV show on TLC,
Yes,
she started her
exactly.
transition very, very young.
Oh,
And
wow.
whereas me, I'm starting my estrogen at almost 23 years old. And so um it it was a huge eye-opening experience.
Okay.
Um, I came out to I told my mom I was gender nonconforming first
Okay.
because I wanted to walk her through the steps. And
Okay.
then a few months ago, I came out to her as trans, and I came out to my sister as trans, and
Okay.
it had well receptive, um, positive energy that came to my way.
Good.
Um, I came out publicly, actually, when the Supreme Court did their decision, which I'm pretty sure we're going to hit on later.
Oh yeah.
And so I came out publicly, and so much support from my friends over at the Capitol,
Okay.
colleagues at the Capitol, to everyday friends, and because I am now truly feeling
Okay.
genuine.
Okay. And you are that.
Mm-hmm.
So so everybody, I got to be honest with you. Everybody in the Capitol building, says that, oh my God, Kendall has such a wonderful, wonderful, bubbling personality. And she's always positive, and she's this and she's that.
Yes.
So I'm really happy. Even my interactions with you, I can't say that I've ever seen you one time with like, oh, today's not a good day. No, you like
Mm-hmm.
every day is a good day. So you have been really, that person that I said, let me find Kendall. I'm feeling a little bit some kind of way today. Let me find Kendall. Get some,
I
get
know
some,
that's
get
right.
some good juju. Get some good stuff going
Yes,
on here.
it's true. I tell everybody I do not have time for no type of negative energy in that building sometimes, and so
Yeah, because there's enough of it going around everything else. So you are absolutely correct. All you can do is focus on you. And so,
mm-hmm.
and that's what I've seen from you. So I just want to tell you how I feel about you and how I feel about the fact that you always have something positive to say and something positive to add. So thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're
being there.
so welcome.
Because you'll walk up and sometimes all a person just needs a hug sometimes. And I'm telling you, man, look, in that Capitol building, sometimes I need a hug, trust me. So,
Yes,
so I'm glad to see
yes.
you coming, Kendall. Glad to see
I
you
I I
coming.
be I know for sure. Like and it's the same with me. Like there'll be some days like I will be just like I'm dreading being up in that building, and I'm just like if I see just my certain individuals in there, everything's gonna be good. I just need a nice
Yeah.
hug, a little bit of relaxation, possibly, and and I'll be back bubbly, smiling, strutting.
Yes, that's strut, honey. I said, if I could walk in heels like that, I'd be in really good shape. So I'm like, well, okay. I said, let me live my life through Kendall, walking through those hallways and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, Kendall, we're gonna talk a little bit about now. Matter of fact, not a little bit. We're gonna talk a whole lot
Mm-hmm.
about the Supreme Court decision.
Mm-hmm.
It came down on June 15th of this year.
Yep.
And it was basically um, dealing with the language of the Civil Rights Act of 1964,
Mm-hmm.
which prohibited sex discrimination. And the issue was whether it protected gays and transgender workers from
Mm-hmm.
workplace discrimination. When the dissent came down, it was 6-3. And it was mainly, they said that the issues that were going on were mainly targeting transgender people of color.
Yep.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about how you feel about that particular piece from the Supreme Court and how you feel about, where it should go from here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say that day was a blur. Like I was scrolling on Twitter, and I followed the SCOTUS page on Twitter, and I saw
Mhm.
the opinion came out, and I read it, and it was you the news of um, that employers can't discriminate. I was shook, and it gave me a sigh of relief, but at the same time, it made me want to work harder. And the reason for that is because even though, in regards of employment, individuals can
Mhm.
be discriminated against, especially
Mhm.
if they're trans, we can still be discriminated against in regards of housing, public
Mhm.
accommodation, um, schools, healthcare. A few, and actually, a week before the court released their opinion,
Uh-huh.
the current presidential administration decided to roll back some of the protections in healthcare that in regards to
Yes.
transgender healthcare,
Yes,
which
they did.
was significant because now it gives um, various medical facilities, if you are trans,
Mhm.
it gives them
Mhm.
the right to discriminate you and refuse services, which vital services. It can be anywhere from just getting your monthly checkup in regards of
Mhm.
hormones or whatnot, to something
Mhm.
more serious like you need a surgery for, you need emergency uh, appendectomy, or
Mhm.
and
Yes.
so right now we are in the cross bounds of really trying to ensure that we continue on this pace of letting people know that discrimination is nowhere here in this country, and then
Mhm.
explicitly here in Missouri, hate is not allowed here.
Yes.
We need to ensure that, especially for next session, that
Sure.
Mona gets passed, that the Missouri Non-Discrimination Act gets
Okay.
passed, and that will provide provisions in regards to public accommodations, that
Sure.
gives provisions on health care, on housing, because now since employment is under the umbrella, because it's
Mhm.
federal, we
Mhm.
don't have to really technically worry about that.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that is a big plus, but we still have a long way to go. Um, and then we also have to talk about more in depth. Um, um, we have to talk about the current disparities, especially with Black trans women, and what we can do to ensure more justice is served, and that their demise is not in vain. Because right now we are struggling to ensure not only our own personal safety, but the
Yes.
safety of other individuals, because at any given moment we can have another Nina Pop.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're right. I want to talk a little bit about, because there are a lot of people who probably don't know that the um, justices
Hmm.
that were for and against, and I want to talk more about the justices that were for, because this is real important that
Hmm.
President Trump, his justice that he appointed, you know,
Hmm.
decided with Justice Roberts, Justice Ginsburg, Justice Sotomayor, Alina Kagan, and that was Justice Gorsuch.
Yes,
And it was really surprising
it
to a
was.
lot of people that,
I was very surprised.
yes,
Um,
so, you can't always assume, you
hmm.
know, how a person is thinking or how a person feels.
Yes.
Because a
And,
lot of people just said, okay, because he was appointed by who he was, by who he
hmm.
was appointed by, that, he thought in a certain direction. And so that lets you know that you can't always assume.
Exactly. And I think what really kind of um, with his vote, in regards of being for ensuring protections. I think it's waking up people of one to kind of see the bigger picture, because I admit it was very unprecedented. Like when I read his name as one of the,
Absolutely.
I had to do a double take. Like, wait,
I
is
was
this
like,
for real?
huh?
Is this
What's
for
happening?
real? But it gave me a sense of hope also, because even though how he got appointed,
Hmm.
he is ensuring that he is doing all what is needed constitutionally. And he wants
Okay.
to ensure that under the United States oath,
Hmm.
constitutional oath, he recognizes various issues and he's going to take those issues to heart. And
Yes,
I think that
I
brings,
agree.
and that there will hopefully open some people's eyes, from elected officials to everyday individuals, and realizing that just because you this way or that way does not define you, and that you have to have an open mind and an open heart and be willing to take in knowledge
Hmm.
and use it to the best of your ability.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Kendall. Totally agree. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Justice Alito, because he was the one that was the most vocal, from what I understand,
Yes.
about how he felt, and he voted against it. He was in that
Mm-hmm.
three, along with, we know who the other two are.
Yeah.
But the points he brought up, I'd say, were access to, like, restrooms and locker
Mm-hmm.
rooms, and he brought up the sexual assault or abuse, and some victims may be sensitive. And then he brought up the sports, college, and housing, and religious employers, and healthcare, and free speech, and all of the above. So, how do you feel about those issues that he brought up?
Think, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, those are legitimate issues to be concerned, because you never know what happens. Not
Exactly.
everybody's perfect.
Okay.
But that does not give you the reason to go against just because there might be a bad apple.
Exactly.
But we have to recognize that when it comes to, like, just even the simplest things as using a restroom,
Hmm.
I know for sure, when I'm in that Capitol building, I do not feel comfortable using the women's room or the men's room.
Okay.
I use the family restroom, and that's
Okay.
on my personal preference.
Okay.
Now, there might be another individual just like me. They'll walk into the women's room and have no issue. They
Okay.
won't even know. So right now, I think it's more superficial issues
Okay.
to get
Sure.
people kind of stirred up, and have them kind of be more on the questioning side, not really educating themselves. And that goes along with being willfully unknowledgeable about
Okay.
this specific issue, and how we as a community have very difficult things we have to combat and have to deal with on a daily basis, because we did not choose to transition.
Okay.
We chose to live our life genuine and as honest as possible.
Okay, absolutely.
It's
Okay.
other individuals that is choosing to be disrespectful, be hateful,
Mhm.
and not show any type of empathy. We're not,
Right.
because I know for sure, me personally, I don't want no special privilege. I don't. I just know right now, I just want to be able to walk down the street and not have to worry about getting ganked.
Yes, absolutely. I want you to be able to walk down. There's something about having that inner peace,
Yes.
and there's nothing that can replace it. So for you to be able to walk down the street and have an inner peace, I think
Mm-hmm.
is important. It's
Yes.
very important. I want to bring a couple of cases to your attention, Kendall, and
Mm-hmm.
they're still going on right now. As a matter of fact, there's a case,
Mm-hmm.
and it's Bostock versus Clayton County, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a gay man that was fired from a government program that helped
Mm-hmm.
neglected and abused children.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a gay softball league and all of the above. So he got fired.
Yeah.
So what do you feel needs to be in place so that those type of things don't happen to people who are just trying to live their lives and help others?
Mm-hmm. I think what a lot of employers should do is have a diverse, a diversity training.
Okay.
We need. I feel like employers should be responsible of acknowledging that there's individuals from all types of different backgrounds.
Mhm.
Yes, racially, yes, gender, but also sexual orientation and um, other means. Because when you are dealing with something, especially this sensitive,
Mhm.
it's it can be uncomfortable.
Yes, it
I'm not
can.
gonna lie, it can be very uncomfortable. But you have to also recognize that as long as this individual is a good employer
Mhm.
or employee,
Mhm.
they are doing what is needed to be done.
Mhm.
They don't get in trouble. Why should you worry about their sexual orientation? Why should you
Exactly.
worry about their gender identity? They've been doing the good work, before you knew. What's making it,
Exactly.
what's making it change now?
Yeah, and you know what? That brings me to another case, Kendall.
Mm-hmm.
That there's a lady in Michigan. Her name is
Mm-hmm.
Amy Stevens,
Yes.
and she was fired from a funeral home
Mm-hmm.
because she decided to come out, and say, "Well, look, I want to dress as a female," and
Mm-hmm.
they fired her. And
Mm-hmm.
so my belief is that Miss Stevens has since passed on,
Yes.
but her family has taken up the torch to
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, we still want to continue this case. And so
Yes.
I think that goes right along with what you're trying to say at this point and say, well, look, hey, this workplace discrimination and
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff is good because they put in place the 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 components of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. But
Exactly.
on the other end, you know, there are still some things in place that prohibit
Mm-hmm.
the enactment of what they're trying to do. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do.
Exactly.
It's going to be real interesting to see. So I want to talk to you about where we go from here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What do you feel? And let's be specific about the state of Missouri,
Okay.
the climate here. Now, there's
Mm-hmm.
already a climate that encompasses, especially if you're in they say the St. Louis area, the
Yes.
black versus white, you know,
Yes.
the wealthy versus the non-wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, how do you feel? Do you think that Missouri has turned any type of a corner by being more accepted? Because what I do know is that, you know, the governor of the state of
Mm-hmm.
Missouri, he appointed a judge
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, has come is openly gay, you
Mm-hmm.
know, which is something that I said, wow, you know, because everybody did not think he would, but he did.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that goes back to that piece, whereas, okay, something that you thought a
Yeah,
person thought a certain type of way, when you look at him, you know, that's not really what happened.
exactly.
So how do you feel about the direction that the state of Missouri is in right now, and where we're headed?
Well, well, that is a good question. I feel personally, I feel like we still have a long way to go.
Okay.
Um, I I definitely know that um, if they keep on dismissing MONA, the Missouri Non-Discrimination Act, um, that there kind of says it in a big picture.
Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact that various places in the state um, have been more is definitely by far more welcoming,
Okay.
but it's just making sure that we have a seat at the table as well
Mhm.
as um, acknowledging what's going on and have conversations, some
Okay.
uncomfortable conversations to discuss what we can do to try better this situation because we are the show me state. I'm the type of person, I'm originally from Chicago. Like, you know, I became the show me what's going to happen.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
Show me what's going to happen. Show me that Mona can get past. Show me that individuals don't have to worry about being kicked out of their homes just because they are a same-sex couple or because they are trans. Let me know that there's other provisionals that
Okay.
ensure safety and the health care of individuals on an everyday need. And I know for sure I'm going to ensure that I'll have a seat at the table, government wise, because I definitely want to not only share my story of being a Afro Puerto Rican trans woman that lived in rural Missouri, Palmyra, Missouri, for over almost 20 years, and then living with both the good and the bad aspects of that, and having to develop over time the tough skin I have, but the resilience that I have as well.
Okay. Now, for our viewers that do not know where Palmyra is, why
Hmm
don't you give a little indication of exactly where you are, Kendall?
So, Palmyra, Missouri is a small town in northeast Missouri. It's in
Okay.
Marion County. It's like 10 miles north of Hannibal
Okay.
and about 14, 15 miles west of Quincy. And it's a small little community. It's kind of close to the Mississippi River,
Okay.
um, but it used to be very Democrat
Oh,
about
okay.
10, 15. No, I take that back, about 20 years ago. And then it
Okay.
switched to full Republican.
Okay.
Um, Actually, Trump he won in Marion County by 94%. Um,
Wow, that is
yes,
huge.
yes, he literally had he just was very popular around this area. It's a very rural community. It's
Okay.
far very agricultural based. We do have some like manufacturing areas outside of the city limits, but
Mhm.
it's predominantly agricultural.
Okay, and I would guess predominantly white.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, tell me, Kendall, in as this 2021 legislation
Mm-hmm.
comes up, because we're not very far from it. Besides Demona,
Mm-hmm.
what else would you like to see as far as legislation? Because I think the MONA encompasses a lot of different aspects,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that maybe that there are some other things that I think that maybe as we go down the list of things, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the biggest on your wish list, there could be two main things that you would like to see happen out of everything that's going on. What would those two things be? You would consider it a win if you could
Mm-hmm.
have these two things happen.
One of them is actually what I'm researching on is adding a third option to driver's licenses and identification cards.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and then also have that option as well on birth certificates. The reason for that is because in the state of Illinois, where I was born, I was able
Yeah.
to switch over, of course, my birth certificate from man to female.
Okay.
But in the state of Missouri, it's still not. It recognizes it, but it doesn't recognizes it.
Okay. Gotcha.
So
You're
be-
straddling that fence.
yes, and
Okay.
with
Gotcha.
that, it comes a lot of it comes with a lot of issues, technicality issues, because when individuals are going to renew their license and you need your birth certificate and or some form of stating that you are a naturalized citizen or natural born citizen of the United States,
Okay.
it can be very difficult for some individuals, and some individuals, they might not even have the proper records either because they was born in a different state,
Okay.
or their documents have been lost due to time of when they was born. And so I want to make sure that that accessibility is there. And then it also gives the option for individuals that are gender nonconforming or gender non-binary, give them an option as well as to say, I don't identify man or female.
Mm-hmm.
I identify as just
Okay.
third party. And it can be I'm right now I'm looking at what kind of verbiage it would say, but
Okay.
it literally just be a safety point for individuals that are gender nonconforming. And then also it will be a safety force of ensuring legitimate identification and ensuring that individuals have the proper necessary means.
Okay, then. Well, I tell you, Kendall, thank you so much for being on the show. I am going to be looking forward to seeing you in the hallways of the Capitol building. As a matter of fact, as my show continues throughout the legislative session, I may
Mhm.
grab you every now and then. I said, okay, let's sit down and let's talk about where we are with Mona, and let's talk about how you're feeling about how things are progressing. So, I'm quite sure that
Yes.
other people are going to want to keep up with you too, like Promo and some other folks. So
Oh,
I'll be
yes.
more than happy. So I can't wait to be able to run into you in the Capitol building and
Yes.
see your smiling face. And you give me that hug that I need every once in a while and keep
Hmm.
it moving. So
Yes.
thank you so much, Kendall. I appreciate you.
Thank you so very much, Cheryl, also for inviting me and welcoming into your space. And just
Okay.
be, I just thank you. And I
Okay
look
then.
forward to seeing you in the Capitol.
Yes, I look forward to seeing you too. So everybody, this is the end of the show. And I can't tell you how pleased and happy I was that Kendall decided to come on. We're going to be looking forward to her and different things that she's going to be doing. She may have some surprises of her own that she may be bringing to the table. So, and one of the things that, when you talked about sitting at the table, one of the sayings that I've always put up from time to time on my Facebook page is that if you do not have a seat at the table, you can almost rest assured that you are definitely on the menu.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, we're going to close. And thank you so much, Kendall. And thank you for all of your work that you do throughout the Capitol building and throughout the state of Missouri. And I'm hoping now nationwide.
Thank you so very much,
Okay.
Cheryl.
Okay. Talk to you later, Kendall.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.